Now let's get to the spoilers. If you've seen Once and Always, Power Rangers Once and Always, you notice it just goes off without the skip of a beat. We already engaged in a fight. The fight that we seen in the trailers before was a flashback, but not a flashback that, at least that the way people were speaking about it online, that I thought that they were going with like something way back. No, this was just a year ago. Trini was alive. Robo Rita came back, and it was brought back due to Billy's looking for Zordon. Now we know that Zordon got sacrificed in space, and you do see the cracked tube, but it's not clear of how that crack came. I may have to watch it again, but I don't believe it came the moment when Rita broke through while Billy was searching for Zordon. But needless to say, once Rita comes in, she is absorbed by Alpha 9, and then transforms Alpha 9 as a physical manifestation of Rita Repulsa's evil energy, which thus turned Alpha into Robo Rita. Basically, in a nutshell, when Zordon was sacrificed, his energy spread across the universe, but so did Rita's evil energy. And in trying to put back Zordon together, he unfortunately put back together Rita. And since her body had moved on, because she became good and all of that, the evil in her, evil presence and her energy was put together and needed a form, and it came into the form of the first person she contacted when she broke through, which was Alpha 9. And it kicks off from there. Rangers get into a fight. Trini jumps into it, and unfortunately, she dies in the most. I mean, it will look dope, but knowing that she died, it was a little bit like, damn, like she just out there just spinning and exploding until she twists off the cliff and then gets vaporized. So now we get introduced to we come back into the story a year later with a time jump. We're introduced to Min Kwan, which is Trini's daughter. And actually, let me just rewind it back. We're introduced to her just before the year jump, when Billy and Zach are having a conversation trying to figure out how should they explain to her, Min, Trini's daughter, that Trini died. And should we tell her that we're Power Rangers and that she didn't just die like randomly or try to come up with some BS story? Should we have to tell her? And that was the argument between Zach and Billy, which I thought was executed in a very dope way, almost in a very soap opera way too. But we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later. But for the most part, that's how we start off the story. Min overhears it, and then we got to get to the time jump, and Min is resentful towards Billy, knowing that Billy was the one that was trying to contact Zordon. He brought back Rita, who eventually killed her mother. So that creates a certain layer of drama and dynamic between her and Billy, which is interesting. And then Zach giving up his career in Congress, we find out, to come down and raise Min. It's almost like if this was an old show, My Two Dads. She has a dad she resents. It's not that she really hates, but she needs to output her anger towards for losing her mom, and also finding out that she's a Power Ranger. And then she has Zach, and Zach is still all cool and chill, and he's the guy that is basically her father figure. It's not clear how far back she knew them both, You know, because we know that Billy and Zach kind of have been gone for quite some time. But the way we come back into the story, it does seem like she's been around them long enough. She knew them very well. It's not like she didn't know that they were involved in her life at some point. They didn't just show up when Trini died in civilian form. Like, she knew them prior. That's what it seems like. And especially for Zach to come to be her guardian and it kind of be altogether cool, she had to have known Zach for quite some time. So this all kind of works in a good way to up the story, set us on our path. And the whole story is really about what it really means to be a ranger, and also once and always a ranger. Because when they get in contact with Rita on the year anniversary of Trini's death, they created a way, just like the old story when Zach, when the first beginning of needing replacing rangers, when Jason, Zach, and Trini had left, they left, and we had to use body doubles and all the rest of it just to try to figure out how we could narratively put it, since they left the show and there was no way to film anything, how we can do this, especially when now in the Once and Always special, Amy Jo Johnson declined to show up for our own reasons. JDF also for his own reasons, and also St. John just couldn't go because he had legal reasons, because they filmed it outside of the United States, and because of his legal ailments he cannot travel abroad. So they found a way to write them, have them part of the special, but write them off. Now, there's an interesting thing. A lot of people said they use recorded ADR or old recordings of them for the opening scene when you see them fighting. And I do believe that it did sound like Kimberly. And it did sound like Trini. But I don't think that was... I'm almost positive that was in Austin St. John. So that's the interesting thing about that part. But needless to say, once we get back into the story and we find out Robo Rita takes these three rangers off and also other rangers, that's how they can incorporate different years of rangers now existed, by showing all the ones that they had shrunk down and used Hasbro toys. Is very good marketing, I'm not gonna lie, as avatars of them to show that they've been taken, shrunk down, and then having their energy absorbed. But it was pretty much a decent way, especially in how Power Rangers operates, for them to be able to explain their absence, all three Rangers' absence. You know, rest in peace to JDF, because he ended up dying after the series. The special wrapped. So before it even came out, it was like, dag man, we're mourning Trini in this as a memorial to Trini, and it's like it's already shot and done. And now JDF is gone. So they had to try to figure out how that it could still all work, and also lend shine and remembrance to Jason David Frank. That being said, though, the story is pretty much Power Rangers, you know. It's dope as hell to see these characters after so much time, especially with a little bit more special effects work that we couldn't really get from before, and especially shot in all digital, very clean and clear, and especially with the updates that they do, how it lends well to how the colors pop on screen, and the fact that we're not using Sentai footage now, so you don't have these dramatic changes in the quality of film when it transitions from the Japanese footage to the American footage. So we have just one clean thing. I think Beast Morphers in a lot of later episodes, even though they use Sentai footage, because it's now more up to current, the transitions between the two aren't as jarring. But at the same time, it's so Power Rangers that it's kind of part of the aesthetic, especially if you've grown up with it. But to see it on camera and just treat it with a lot more care and a lot more maturation, I do believe that it provided a better experience, especially for people that have watched it growing up to now. And also, as the series kind of progresses, you see it get to this kind of level of production anyway. So for them to take the next step, especially with Netflix, and to give it more of a filmatic approach, a more filmatic, it's not a film, but a more filmatic approach, it actually lends well to the aesthetic and how it looks and how it translates on camera. And when we finally get through the almost the mildly coming of age of Min Kwan, going from the emotion of wanting retribution and revenge for the death of her mother, and not being able to, now that she knows her mother's a Power Ranger, taking her power morpher and trying to morph herself so she can avenge her mother, and the power not selecting her because all she was about was revenge. And there's an excellent dialogue between Min Kwan and her uncle Zach, really trying to not only just tell her, teach her, this is the reason why you can't morph. Rita's here for revenge. That led it to your mother dying. You going out for revenge is not going to help. And the powers, for all intents and purposes, is of a good nature. It can sense that you're not in it to save lives. You're in it to basically take life in revenge, and the Power Ranger power won't select you for that. And she needed to understand what it meant to be a Power Ranger, and by the very end, Zach's words held so sincere and dear. It also adds more weight to how it ends, reminding everyone, especially before it even ends, when bringing Steve Cardenas as Rocky and bringing Catherine, I forget her last, Catherine Sutherland as Kat, which is so cool that that's still her name. When they bring them in, it also lends more weight to once a Ranger, always a Ranger, when they come back and have to jump back into a fight, creating proxy coins, which also lends a little bit more information to how other Rangers are able to morph. It sounded like he just made it, so I don't know if that was the first time he made proxy coins. It kind of feels like it. But at the same time, with that kind of idea that they can do that, it also now kind of explains how in other specials, other Rangers that were supposed to be representations of Mighty Morphin were able to show up in the series and still be able to use their powers, even though in story, in canon, that should not be. And I thought it was very excellent how, even though they couldn't really do too much elaboration on a lot of moments and things that have happened before, that they were able to incorporate a lot of things from before and kind of pepper it throughout the series, even though in 55 minutes, to kind of bring in other generations of Power Rangers to let you know that they are in canon, they all exist and coexist. Even in sidebars are saying the Pandora Protocol to get all Rangers all across the world, and it's acknowledging that there are different teams out there, and that also makes everything kind of in canon with all the specials that JDF has been in, Adam Park has been, it just adds more weight. All other specials that these Mighty Morphin characters have popped up in start to get canonized in a better way in Once and Always. And if they have a series, they can do so much more to also bring in other generations of Power Rangers and move, kind of fix the canon, if you will, and really clarify what is canon and what isn't, and maybe even kind of lend itself to certain things in Boom. Even though you could say Boom exists in another universe, you can still borrow from what Boom has done and incorporate it, such as the Omega Rangers, to also add more to it. All you need to do is just have one scene of Zach looking at his Omega Ranger helmet, and that is just enough. You ain't got to say anything else. It'll just let people know that Zach was not only just that Ranger, just the Mastodon Ranger. He was also an Omega Ranger. And if you want, you could actually throw in a helmet from one of the teams that they didn't use from before and just say that they were also another team after that. Or if not that, just throw in matter of fact, where the white Ranger actually came from that season, you could have him holding the green helmet because there wasn't a Black Ranger in that Sentai series, but there was a Green Ranger. You could just say he became a Green Ranger shortly after that. You know what I mean? Like, and it could knock on the door using the Sentai footage that we've never used before, and also explain how Sentai in that one I think it was the 20th anniversary, if not the 25th, where JDF showed up, how they were able to use, because they skipped a few Sentai seasons, but they were in the Legendary Wars. That's what it was. You could kind of incorporate and fold in how other Rangers that was there before had those powers. And you could just say Zack showed up as a different Ranger, and Adam was in the Black Ranger when he showed up there. So at least you could explain how you had all these other Rangers that we've never even seen before, and just say we have, but that was one of the original Mighty Morphins on their journeys after, Omega Rangers, and coming back down and living their life, maybe having families and moving on, divorces, whatever, but this is could kind of canonize a lot of things that you didn't really explain, couldn't really explain. You kind of did it for the novelty, but now you can kind of go fix continuity issues and errors and kind of make a cohesive, universe moving forward, even though we know they're going to try to reboot it all. Now with the success of how Once and Always is, now you have an opportunity to actually do that moving forward. And to wrap up, before we get right into the picks in the nitpicks, I will say this. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we're going to get into the picks of the nitpicks very detailed later, because there's certain things I felt like they could have worked on, but I can't expect so much from 55 minutes and having so much that you want to deal with and still keep it Power Rangers. Also mature it enough, but also make it easy for others to jump right in. They were, even though in 55 minutes they were juggling a lot, and also to keep the attention of everyone, to keep it moving forward. And that was, to me, if you actually, was at the expense of some of the action sequences. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of actions, but there was just also a lot of action sequences that could not give you more battles in that moment, because we had to move to the next scene, the next scene, to tell the story, and the overarching story was the actual priority. And if you ask me, they had a story to tell, and I think they could have got to a lot of the story could have been even better had they had more time to allow it to breathe. And you're going to hear me say that a lot throughout the picks and the nitpicks. But had they had more time to let things breathe, they could have expanded on certain action sequences, made them even a little bit more better and more articulated, and could have had more time to make it even more exciting and challenging, as opposed to being able to only select the only things that you can to keep the film going forward. If they did shoot a lot of action, they had to dense it down to keep it within a 55-minute time, and also be able to build out more of the Rangers. And even at the end of the day, it may still feel like a Ranger episode even in that, but with a lot more sequences, but the sequences had to be a little bit shorter than we would have gotten in a regular episode, because we have to also tell the story, get to the next thing, kind of remind you who these characters are and where they've been, but for the most part, keep it still centered around Trini and Min Kwan becoming and evolving into a Yellow Ranger, which she does at the very end, when she understands what Zack was trying to explain to her when she became selfless and she jumped out like a hero. The Morpher protected her from the blast of saving Billy, just like her mother tried to save Billy, but she lost her life there. But now that Min had her power morpher, if you ask me, especially because she got the memories of Trini, some part of Trini in that morpher was able to protect her daughter from the lethal blast that Rita tried to hit her with, and remind her of what it was as her mother to be a Ranger, so she could take up the mantle and carry on the tradition and become her own Ranger. And I think that it was excellent in execution. Excellent. The story, the idea, in execution, it was still good. I thought that there was so much room to make it better, but it was so limiting due to the 55-minute mark and to keep everything moving fluidly. That's why they say that the opening fight scene kind of is cut up. There's other footage that they had, but they had to cut it down for sensitivity reasons. But I'm also sure because they didn't want to make it they couldn't make it too long because we still have a 55-minute time to keep it within. And with that being said, I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I wonder how you guys feel. Leave it in the comments below. And without further ado, on to the picks. Now for the spoilers. Look, before we get into the picks, I gotta let you know everything that you've wanted to see in this, you're not going to get. It was a great special, make no mistakes. But if you wanted details of where these characters have been, you're not gonna get that. This is really about how the original Rangers deal with Trini's passing and the passing of the torch to Min, who becomes the Yellow Ranger. Alright, so without further ado, here are my top, and I have to pick, if I have to pick the top 4 picks, then these are my let's get to top, my pick number 1. Let's get to pick number 1.